my garden friends. This is Jersey Shore Lisa from MyNJGarden.com. I am very excited for the coming week because on Tuesday, which is November 23rd, 2021, a New Jersey homeschoolers group has decided that they're interested in learning more about permaculture. And I would be happy to share my experiences, my property, and what I know with those kids and their parents. So I've arranged a tour. They're gonna come, some of them. I'm actually gonna do a few consecutive tours in the spring and summer so folks can see the garden at different times of year. Right now, everything's kind of going to sleep. It is the fall, it's the end of November, but there's so much to talk about what is happening in the garden now, what's happening in the soil. We're gonna talk about composting, we're gonna talk about biochar, we're gonna talk about setting up a sheet mulched lasagna garden bed now at this time of year in order to get ready for spring planting. And there are a couple of garden chores that I need to do to get this property in ship shape for a tour. So the first thing I'm going to do is maybe not so much in the front yard. I don't have too many really large oak trees or shade trees right around, but there are quite a few around the perimeter of my backyard, and that is throwing a lot of leaves on the lawn. So rather than rake them up and bag them up and send them with the municipality to do whatever they do with them, which takes them to the composting center for the municipality, I'm going to use them. I'm going to compost them. So today I have my mower ready. It's the only time of year that I actually put a bag on the back of my mower because I want to collect all these leaves and chop them all up into really tiny pieces so that I can use them as mulch on my annual garden beds this time of year. It helps to insulate the soil, it helps make a happy home for the microbes and the earthworms, feeds those earthworms, and it makes good use of that carbon, organic matter that fell from the trees. We're putting it back into the ground where it belongs. It's also nice because on the annual veggie garden beds, chopped up leaves break down fairly quickly. They'll break down within a year and can get tilled into the soil. So if you're planting things like carrots or beets or root veggies, including sweet potatoes, when you dig those things up or when you pull them, inevitably whatever mulch you have on top will often get incorporated into your soil. If you use something heavy and really high in like lignins, which is the very woody material, that could be detrimental to the fertility of your soil. That will take up a lot of nitrogen in the soil in order to decompose. So we don't want to till in things that are really heavy woody material. The chopped up leaves break down much faster and provide nutrients in the soil, but without damaging the fertility of the soil. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm also going to turn my compost today because I want to talk to them about the importance of that and the importance of compost. And I'm gonna make some biochar so they can see what that's about. I also have, I have a Biocharly, which is a kiln that's about the shape and size of a log that you'd use in your fire pit or your fireplace. But you can also make your own Biocharly kiln out of a brand new, clean paint can. But there are lots of ways to make small pyrolysis kilns that you can use in your fire pit or fireplace in order to make your own biochar. So when you first make the biochar, you're just making charcoal. It is clean and very stable carbon, but it does attract things like microbes and nutrients and anything that it's surrounded by. It's very attractive. So it needs to be charged before you add it to your soil, because you don't want to add clean charcoal to your soil, have it attract all the nutrients to it and not have enough bioavailable to the plants. So when you make your own charcoal, then you want to charge it up by incorporating it into either compost tea or into your compost, and let it steep, let it soak up all those nutrients and all those microbes and become this awesome home for all those little critters and teeming with microbes, as they say. And then once it's charged, you add it to your soil, and it will create, it's a wonderful soil amendment. It will create fertility for long periods of time and increase the water holding capacity of your soil. So we're going to talk about that too. So much to talk about with homeschoolers in the fall in the garden. So thank you so much. I'm going to show you a couple of clips of what I'm doing. And if you have suggestions for what else I can share with the homeschoolers regarding permaculture and growing food in the fall, please leave it in a comment below. I'll incorporate it into my tour and my talk. We'll also take some video during the tour, and we'll do a highlight reel and share that with all of you on the channel. So please subscribe and like the video, and let's get started. Look at all that wonderful mulch, and I'm going to put it right in this garden bed. Right now, the only things that are planted in this garden bed that are still living, this pepper has had it, are garlic, hardneck garlic I planted just a few weeks ago. And it's starting to come up. You can see it here. There's the hardneck garlic. And I'm just spreading around all of this mulch to tuck this bed in for the winter. So another thing that we're doing to prepare for the homeschoolers tour tomorrow in the yard is to make some biochar, so they get to see that process. Well, they're not going to see the process, but I want them to be able to see the end result. This is my Biochar kiln. This is just an empty metal container. I've filled it up with sticks, which is my stock material, and these are just sticks from around the yard. You end up putting the lid on and putting the kiln into the fire pit as though it's a log. It's just the same size as you would use a piece of firewood to burn in your fireplace or in your fire pit. So we're gonna put that in there, and the process of pyrolysis is gonna happen, and that is cooking this at a very high temperature but limiting access to oxygen so that the wood inside doesn't burn off and turn to ash. Instead, it becomes charcoal. So all the volatile compounds are burned off. There are some holes here to allow those gases to escape, but oxygen is very limited, so all the volatile chemicals are compounds are burned off, and what's left is charcoal that's black. You can use it to draw with when it's completely done and you pour it out of the kiln. It'll sound like glass. It'll tinkle like glass. It has tons of surface area, and it's very porous, so it actually attracts and holds microbes and nutrients inside of it. Once you've charged it by adding it to compost or compost tea, that actually helps it to attract and retain the nutrients in all those porous spaces, and then it becomes an excellent soil amendment, especially to help retain moisture and nutrients in very sandy soil. It's the end of the season for the rain barrels. We've started to get some frost, and it's time for me to wrap them up and put them away for the season. The easy part of this is just disconnecting the gutter on top of the compost system from the rain barrels, just taking that downspout out of the top hole of the back barrel and then allowing the water to drain. You can use a soaker hose and direct it into your beds to help the water drain effectively to where you need it the most. Once the barrels are empty, now even though there's nothing coming out of this spout, it's completely open at this point, there is some water left in the barrels, so I have to carefully dump them, and then I'll just turn them upside down and leave them in place for the winter. You don't want to leave water in the barrels because when water freezes, it expands, and that could crack the barrel or cause it to leak. So I empty the barrels, turn them upside down, and leave them in place. They're heavy enough, and this is a sheltered enough location that they don't end up blowing over or becoming an issue. So that's how I prep my rain barrels for the winter. And when the homeschoolers come, I'll talk to them about the importance of rain barrels, why I chose to put my rain barrels on the compost system rather than on the house, and how I use the rainwater that I collect. Okay, my friends, I'm emptying these rain barrels of the last bit of water that was in them, and I'm using it to help me as I turned my compost. So when you turn your compost, it's really important to make sure there's enough moisture in your compost pile. Notoriously, for me, my problem is always that my pile has dried out too much. And that often happens when I don't turn it often enough. And then when the pile dries out, the decomposition actually stalls. So those microbes really want to travel and multiply and really live their best life in damp compost material. So let me just show you that I turned the pile by moving it from this side of my compost enclosure over to this side, and you can see some of it is really well decomposed, but there's also quite a lot of identifiable material in there. It is not cooked yet. It is not ready to spread on my gardens, and while I could put it around on my garden beds at this time of year, I don't think that it would be detrimental, but I want it to be a little more broken down. So I'm going to turn it a few more times before I start to let it cure and use this batch of compost for the spring when I'm ready to plant new plants. So it will be really well cooked and cured by that time. So as I moved the material from this side to this side, I moved about a foot of material at a time, and then I spread water around on that dryish layer, and then I added another foot of compost, and then I spread water around on top of it to make sure to spread moisture through the whole pile. You don't want to move a whole dryish pile and then dump like gallons and gallons of water on top and hope it seeps through the whole thing. Anything that you're putting in compost is going to really retain water very, very well. So you'll have a big wet spot in there, soaking wet, and then the edges will still be dry. So you don't want to do that. You really want to put moisture through it the whole time you're spreading it out. And this stuff was in there, and it's still green, this fennel that I cut down, but it is very dried out. So I'm just going to use this to help me start my my fire pit, and it's going to smell wonderful as it burns in the fire pit, and that will help me get it going so that I can make biochar in the backyard. Right here you can see that this bucket is filling up, and I'm just going to dump these at this point because I want to turn those barrels over. So that's what's happening today as we prepared for the homeschooling tour. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and I hope that you'll join me for my next garden update. Have a great day.